So we're here today. We're going to plant an Osage orange. The process for planting an Osage orange is very much like the process of planting any other tree. We want to start off by ensuring two things when we go to dig our hole. We want to make sure that our hole is twice as wide as the root ball and just as deep. We don't want to dig it any deeper than we have to, because if we do, the tree is liable to settle. And we're going to miss the most important thing of planting a tree, which is ensuring that the root flare is at soil height. So we begin by maybe removing a little soil off the top until we find these first roots coming off of the stem. And that's our root flare. We want that to be right at soil grade. So once we have that exposed, we can tell how deep we're going to need to dig our hole. So it's always nice to just use a shovel, use the blade or the handle, whichever you prefer, and measure the depth that your hole is going to be. So this is going to be just beyond this indentation in our shovel blade, which gives us a good guideline. And as far as the width, we want it to be twice as wide as the root ball. So using the handle, then we want to do about double that. If you go a little wider, that's fine. Wider is good, deeper is not good, because we don't want that tree to settle and lose that root flare. All right, Misty, you want to help me plant this Osage orange?
Yeah.
All right, so if at all possible, whenever you're moving a tree, you want to move it by the root ball rather than grabbing the stem and shaking it around. That can cause damage to these roots up here. Also, with an Osage orange, the thorns are probably going to prick you. So you want to come give me a hand with this root ball? Just carefully place it right in the middle of your hole. Now we're just going to confirm that the soil grade and the top of the tree are nice and level, so we're not going to bury that root flare. Because if we do, that's going to cause issues in the future with stem girdling roots. It can promote this just circling the tree and choking it off in the future. So now that we have the tree in place, we just ensure that it looks as straight as it can. This being a pretty open, kind of wild shaped species, doesn't matter too much, but if you have an extremely straight tree, you might want to make sure that it's not lopsided in the hole or anything. And now we just start backfilling. So you want to take the soil you have and break it up, but don't break it up super fine. You want to leave some nice aggregates and stuff like this in here. It doesn't need to be coffee grinds. And we're just going to backfill it. You want to keep, if you're planting in a grassy area and you have a sod layer like this, try to keep that out too and just use the soil. Put some rocks back in, that's fine. You probably want to avoid putting the big guys in like this though. And the important thing is to make sure that you don't have any air bubbles left, air pockets left in the soil that'll let the root system dry out.
But you also don't want to compact it too much?
Correct, yeah. You don't want to pulverize the soil and compact all of the air pockets out of it. You just don't want any big air pockets in there because that'll allow the root system to dry out. So usually just firming it down with the pressure of your hands, like you're kneading dough maybe. So it's firm but not hard. When you're backfilling, it's best to not amend the soil. Some people want to put a lot of compost or other things in there to make the soil very nice, but you have to remember that this is just a very small portion of this tree's root system. It's eventually going to have to spread out to this entire area. If you've selected the right tree for the right place, it should be able to take whatever soil conditions you're putting it in. Adding nice amendments to artificially improve the soil in the long run is going to give the tree kind of a false start. And when it hits all the native soil around, it's going to be so nice and fluffy, it's going to have problems spreading its root system. All right, so once the tree is in the ground, one of the best things you can do for its survival is provide it with a nice mulch ring. Mulch does a lot of things. It regulates the soil temperature. It's going to keep it a little warmer in the winter, a little cooler in the summer. It's also going to help hold moisture so the root ball doesn't dry out as much. And also over time, if you're using an organic mulch like these ground wood chips, it'll break down and provide some nutrients to the tree.
Is there such a thing as too much mulch?
There absolutely is such a thing as too much mulch. You want to put down about 2 to 4 inches. And one of the most important things is making sure that mulch doesn't touch the base of the tree. This root flare that we worked so hard earlier to keep exposed, we want to make sure that that remains exposed. So you want to leave a little ring just around the base of the tree of bare soil to prevent that root flare from getting covered up. And whether you spread the mulch by hand, with a pitchfork, with a rake, it doesn't really matter so much as you're keeping it the right depth and keeping it off of the base of the tree. Too often you'll see mulch piled up against the trunk in what we call a volcano shape. You want to avoid that at all costs because keeping that mulch up against the base of the tree is going to hold moisture there. It can promote insects and diseases. Keeping the trunk clear is very important. So once the mulch is spread nice and evenly, and it's about 2 to 4 inches deep, the only thing to remain is to water the tree. You really want to slowly soak the entire area that we've just dug up and planted in. Make sure the root ball gets really, really soaked. And you're going to want to do that about 2 to 3 times a week, depending on rainfall and temperature, for the first 3 years the tree is in the ground.